Real cases, real people. Judge Judy.
Stephanie Willis says former friend Tiffany Thorpe owes for 2 checks she cashed on her behalf. Stephanie says the checks turned out to be stolen.
You walked into the bank, Miss Willis.
Right.
And you see these checks that are made out for $447.50.
Right.
They're not made out to anybody.
No, they were not made out to anybody. At the time I was having a conversation with the teller at my bank. I was in a hurry to get somewhere, but I asked him, I got up, going out to ask Tiffany to sign them and ask why they were not made out to anybody. I turned around at that point and asked him if it would be all right if I did it myself, or
Why?
if it would matter, because I was in a hurry to get to see someone.
You know, I don't believe you either.
Huh?
I don't believe you either. I don't believe her. I don't believe you.
Okay.
Miss Willis, you want to know why it doesn't sound right to me?
Yes, I do.
She says, could you cash these checks for me? They're being given to my boyfriend from his ex-wife for child support. Then they would have been made out to him. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure that out. Especially if you tell me that his name, Eric, is written on the bottom of the check. Did you write his name too?
No, I did not. Tiffany
So that
did.
was there.
Right.
Who wrote that?
Tiffany did.
Did you see that?
I did not, but I know her handwriting. I've known her for 4.5 years. And
So
I
you
her
know that this
handwriting.
is her handwriting?
Yes.
So now you know the following.
Look at the dotted
now
I.
you know the following. You know that she forged his name.
Right.
And you knew that when you were at the bank.
No.
Oh, yeah, you knew of 4
Not
years
the
at
bank.
that point.
I'm sorry. Not at the bank. I was not aware of that. At
Why
the
not?
bank, I assumed. I did not know the circumstances following the checks, and I assumed that she had gotten it from a friend of hers or perhaps her lover. I did not ask, and I was not sure. But at this point, I knew Tiffany, and we were very good friends for 4.5 years. I had no reason not to believe her.
I'll hear you.
Well, on that day, we did go for my graduation practice, and we were sitting there, and Stephanie was sitting in the car, and I had the checkbook sitting there in the council, and she had asked me what it was, and I had told her that they were stolen checks. And then we went to the gas station.
When you say she asked you what they were and you said they were stolen checks, are you telling me that she didn't say, where did you steal them from, whose are they? Nothing.
No, Your Honor.
She asked you nothing?
No. She just asked me what they were.
And you said stolen checks?
Yes, I told her.
Go
They were
ahead.
Stolen checks. We went to the gas station about 2 blocks away so I can get gas. And then I went inside to pay, and when I came back out, she told me that she needed to be dropped back off at her car. So I dropped her back off at the car, and I went home. And about a week later, she came knocking on my boyfriend's door and was talking to him about some sort of checks.
Step up.
Well, Your Honor.
Name.
My name is Timothy S. Brown.
Tell me about the conversation that you had with the plaintiff.
May of 2000, Stephanie had stopped at my house on 3 different occasions. On the first occasion, she came in my home and told me that she had gotten some checks from Tiffany that were stolen. This is the time I just found out about the whole stolen check situation. We were only dating for a couple months at the time. She told me that she had gotten some checks from Tiffany and positive in her account, and that she said that Tiffany said they were for child support. I knew at that time that something was wrong because I get cash from my ex-wife.
Did you tell her that?
Yes, I did.
And what was her reaction?
All she said that she got the checks from Tiffany, and that Tiffany said they were for child support. And
was she crying?
No, she was upset.
Was she upset?
She was kind of scared because she told me that her mother, her parents are involved in the bank account somehow, and she wanted to get it taken care of before her parents found out about it.
So that was the first time she came
Right.
to your house, and then?
I talked to Tiffany about it. At this time, Tiffany was denying the whole thing to me because she didn't want me to find out about it. So
Tiffany lied?
She lied to me about it, yeah.
And then she lied to her mother, too?
At the time, yes.
She lied.
You know.
Now, when she lied, did you believe her?
No, I was really skeptical about the whole thing, you know, from the start.
So initially, when she told you that she didn't know what this friend was talking
Right.
about.
I had my suspicions. I had contacted her mother to talk about the situation, to find out if she knew anything about it.
And her mother said?
No, she didn't, and reassured me that her daughter wouldn't do anything like that.
Okay. Step up a second. Sure. When your daughter told you what happened, she initially told you she didn't know what she was talking about. Is that right?
Well, when Stephanie came to me, and Stephanie told me a story that Tiffany gave her 2 checks and that they were for babysitting that Tiffany had done for somebody, and that she cashed those checks for Tiffany. But she didn't say anything about child support to me. She said it was babysitting money. That's what Tiffany had told her.
Is that right?
So,
I don't remember telling her that.
Your Honor, we have in a police report statement here, it's the statement that Tiffany had made to the police.
Let me say it. You told the police that you gave her 2 checks, madam. You told the police that you gave her 2 checks to cash.
No, Your Honor, I did not.
Your name is Tiffany, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Tiffany advised that she had given 2 checks to a Stephanie Willis for her to cash. You mean the police made a mistake?
When I went and confessed to the police officers that I had taken the checks from Eric, they had asked me, but Stephanie's checks were not in the bunch, because the checks had never cleared his bank.
I'm asking you a question. The police wrote this down. Tiffany advised that she had given 2 checks to Stephanie Willis for her to cash. Is what you're telling me that the police either mistakenly wrote this down or that you lied to the police?
I told the police officers that I had not given Stephanie any checks.
So that, according to you, the police officers wrote it down wrong. Put your hand down. The police officers wrote it down wrong.
Obviously, yes, Your Honor.
Listen to this, Bird. You have to listen to this. This officer who took this report from this 17-year-old psychopath must have been doing something that day to make himself feel happy, because he too is writing a once-upon-a-time story, according to her. Let me tell you what else he wrote. Reporting officer asked Tiffany about the 2 checks that she gave to Stephanie Willis. Tiffany advised that the 2 checks were for $447.50 each. Tiffany, that's her, you know, with the belly button showing. Tiffany advised that she filled out the checks but left the pay to blank. Tiffany advised that she had Stephanie put her name in the blank. Tiffany advised that Stephanie cashed the checks and gave her the money. Tiffany, Miss Exposed Belly Button, advised that Stephanie wanted $50 to cash them, and she was given that amount.
But
the $50, which...
Shut!
Okay.
Is she getting therapy? Is she in therapy and counseling?
After all this happened, I had 3 counselors involved, as a matter of fact.
Does she live at home with you?
Yes, she does now.
And what about him?
Well, actually, let me tell you the whole story.
Dying to hear this story. I thought this was easy.
Actually, I was very much against this relationship because of
That's
the
a very
great
good
age
thing.
difference. And at one point, I even got the authorities involved. I called social services, got a counselor involved, and I tried everything in my power to keep them apart. The only thing that accomplished is put a wedge between my daughter and my relationship. So I decided the worst thing that I could have done was to try to interfere with that relationship. And so I choose not to any longer interfere with it at all.
Okay. Now, but she's living at home?
Yes.
What about him?
He is staying there temporarily
At
with
your
his
house?
2 children, yes, actually.
You know, there's one thing about not interfering, and there's another thing, and, you know, she's 17 years old.
Right.
I don't believe her mother is responsible for this $950.
Correct.
And since she's 17 years old, I cannot find her liable. Do you understand that? Mm-hmm. Do you understand? The only way that I can find her liable is if I make her mother responsible. She is, I believe you. I believe that you got suckered in by her. And I believe that she is a liar. I believe that she continues to lie. I believe that she's probably in a relationship that she shouldn't be in. I believe that her mother is caught between a rock and a hard place. But I think that her mother being caught in a rock and a hard place does not put her mother in a position where she is responsible for the forgery and the theft by her daughter to you. Because I, too, believe that you had a certain responsibility, and that was to be a little more vigilant. Not put your name on these checks when it was clear that they couldn't have been for child support, because child support checks would have been made out to him for the 2 children, not
I
blank.
had no experience with that.
Not
the story
blank.
she gave me, I had no reason.
Well, you
not
should have
to
been more
trust her.
vigilant.
I
Certainly,
should
her
have.
mother could.
I should
Certainly,
have.
her mother could not have known.
Right.
And in order for me to find in your favor against this side of the table, I have to rule that her mother is responsible for paying you back, and I cannot, in good conscience, do that.
Neither could I.
I can't hold her responsible. She's 17. I mean, I wish I could, but I can't. So you're going to have to cover these checks yourself and be a little more vigilant. I feel sorry for you. I really do. I really don't know what I would do in your situation.
It's a difficult situation. I didn't know what else to do either. And I just hope that they will straighten out the problems that they've had in the past.
These two girls aren't going to straighten out their problems. As far as these two people are concerned, 3 years from now, they won't be talking about each other because he won't be around.
That's what I figured.
But she'll be probably around with her own baby that you're going to have to take care of.
Well, hopefully
that won't happen.
Hopefully. Well, why?
Because I wouldn't leave her like that.
You
I'm
wouldn't?
a good father.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell me that you took care of it so that you couldn't have any more children. Two was enough.
I'm a good father.
Goodbye.
Parties are
Thank you.
excused. You may step out.
She was on drugs, crack cocaine. I know that for a fact.
She was on drug use too.
Everything about her changed after she started smoking.
She has been numerous times coming to me asking for drugs.
I did not know they were stolen checks.
Who would put their own name on a check? She knew that they were stolen.
I had to pay that off myself with my own money out of my own pocket.
I got, just like her mother, got caught in the middle of all of it with the lies and the deceit and, the drug use and everything between everybody. It was a crazy situation.
This isn't the end of it.
6-year-old student Charles Hale is suing Terry Knight and his fiancée, Deborah Head, for assaulting him at a Cher concert.
Order. All rise. Quiet in the courtroom, please. Now, this is case number 470 on the calendar in the matter of Hale versus Knight Head.
Thank you, bud.
You're welcome, Judge. Parties have been sworn in. You may be seated. Sir, have a seat, please.
Mr. Hale, you and some friends, and clearly the defendant and his wife, were at a concert, and it is your claim that they assaulted you. You want to be compensated because you were injured. So you want to be compensated for your pain and suffering and for the concert tickets. The defendants indicate that you started this, what turned out to be an altercation, and that it's your fault. So what kind of concert was it?
That was a Cher concert.
And who did you go with, sir?
I went with Brad and 2 other friends.
Where were you seated?
Probably in the second top tier of the arena, so kind of high up, about mid-arena.
Were you sitting in front of or behind the defendants?
In front of, row down, about 3 feet down below them.
1 row or 2?
Just 1.
So you were seated immediately in front of them?
Directly in front of them.
Is that right?
Down in front.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So now tell me what happened.
We got there probably about 7:15, found a place to park, and on the way to the concert, found just a little place to stop and have a bite to eat, had a beer, and went on to the concert. Got there probably about 8:15, 8:30, got situated in our seats.
So you got there after the show started?
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
We watched the first act, which was Cyndi Lauper. Of course, went to concession.
No, you couldn't have watched the whole first act because you got there an hour
We'll
late.
watch the rest of the first act. And made a trip or two to the concession.
For what?
During the meantime.
For what?
For a beer or nachos or...
So you had several beers by that
Just a couple,
time.
yes, ma'am.
You had several beers before you actually
Yes, ma'am, a
started to
couple.
watch Cher.
Uh-huh.
Now, did you or any member of your group get up to go for refreshments during the act?
Maybe once.
So let me understand this, Mr. Hale. You make the trip in to go to a concert. You decide to arrive late.
Mm-hmm.
You disturbed a whole bunch of people, you and your friends, getting into your seats.
I wouldn't say disturbed.
Sure you
ma'am,
did.
but-
Well, you wouldn't say it because you're a young, foolish man. So after having arrived late and disturbing all the people around you, either you or one of your idiot friends or all of you get up to go again, once or maybe twice, to a concession stand for another beer or nachos. So you disturb everybody again.
Well, we were right on an end row that we could just
Oh,
go
no,
right
you
down the
weren't.
steps.
There were people behind you, sir. And it wouldn't have made any difference to you whether there were people you had to disturb anyway.
That's not true, Your Honor.
Well, you were disturbing people, sir. You kept getting up and getting back in your seats, right?
Well, it was kind of consensus. Everybody, that's kind of how it was going.
I don't understand what
area.
you're talking about, sir.
Well,
it's kind of a consensus. What does that mean?
There were other people around us that were up and down, and there were small intermissions between the actual intermission. So, I mean, I didn't feel that we were up, going up and down, disturbing the people behind us.
Well, you were.
Okay?
When people come to a theater late, they're usually rude. They usually just care about themselves and don't give a hoot about anybody else, but sometimes it's unavoidable. So aside from getting up and down during the performance and arriving late, one or both of these people asked you during the course of the performance to sit down.
That's correct.
And they asked you to sit down because they couldn't see. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Now, how many of you and your friends were standing?
There were 4 of us.
How were you all standing?
Yes, ma'am. If I may explain why we were standing, I would like to. There was a whole row of girls in front of us that had tiaras and feather boas, and just everybody was dancing. And we explained to the defendants, as when these people stood, we had to stand as well to see the concert. And we tried to explain to the defendants that, you know, they asked us to sit down. We said, well, if we sit down, you're still not going to be able to see because every row in front of us is standing up. So if we sit down, we can't see, nor will you be able to. You know, so I'm sorry.
Is that what you carefully explained to them?
Yes, ma'am, the first time. Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
And the defendant, he kindly started getting a little rude. And so I returned the favor, and I was just like, sir, we cannot sit down. At that point, they started to get quite belligerent. And next thing I know, Mr. Knight leaned down to the back of my head and said, "You will sit down," in a very, very threatening manner. And so we just decided that was it. Just ignore him, just continue standing, because we couldn't see if we sat down either, and just finish out the concert and just ignore them. Cher was into about our 4th or 5th song, and all of a sudden I felt just a pull at my collar, kind of like the collar I'm wearing now, and then just a fist. I got hit here, pump knots all around my head. I mean, he just went like just continuously. My witness saw what was going on.
Don't tell me what he saw.
Okay.
Step up. So, Mr. Knight punched Mr. Hale.
Yes.
Several times.
Several times.
And then what did you see?
I was facing like this, and all of a sudden I heard this commotion and looked over, and he had him by the collar with one hand, beat me with the other.
He was punching him.
Right.
But what was Miss Head doing?
As I was trying to get him off of him, I was kicked or something about this area of me as I turned like that to assist him. And at that point is when we finally got broke away.
Okay.
Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm sorry. They took the lady out in handcuffs. It says in my police report that when the police got up there, that Mrs. Head was striking down at my friend.
So, as far as you know, she didn't touch you?
I don't believe that she touched me. I didn't know,
so
like I said.
Why is she a defendant? Why did you sue her?
Because she was to my back, and I just was getting hit from back and forth. I didn't know what was going on.
Okay.
I had no idea what was going on behind me.
Now, Mr. Knight.
Yes, ma'am.
Now I'll hear you.
Well, as you said, we went to the concert.
You went to the concert. They were seated in front of you, and they were standing up.
That's correct.
Go ahead. Anybody else standing up?
No, ma'am.
Nobody?
No, ma'am.
No, Mr. Knight. Mr. Knight, that's not true. Just because I was on his case, I don't want you to think you have a friend in me. When you go to a Cher concert and everybody's doing their thing, there are a lot of people standing up. So don't tell me that there weren't other people standing up.
I saw no one standing in front of him when they were there, except for them standing up. And I did ask him to sit down.
And you punched him?
I punched him after he pushed me, yes, ma'am.
Several times.
No.
There was no pushing.
Mr. Knight, you punched him. He didn't assault you first. You got frustrated because he was ignoring you.
No, ma'am.
Tell me how he pushed you, sir. He's sitting in front of you, his back is towards you, and he's had a few beers, so he is feeling pretty good.
Yes, ma'am.
You tell him you will sit down.
No, ma'am.
No.
Yes,
I
sir.
asked him if he would sit down so that the people behind him could see.
No ask.
Right. No, you did that the first time.
Yes, ma'am.
And
And he
probably
told
the
me
sec-
at that point that he bought his effing ticket and he would do what he wanted to.
Probably close.
About the 3rd time. Maybe.
Quiet. Go ahead.
Then I leaned forward. I did not touch him whatsoever. I said, buddy, if you'll look around, there's no one else standing.
That's not true.
I don't want to hear you.
It's ridiculous.
I don't want to hear you.
Sorry.
You are rude.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And at that point, he turned around and looked at me and pushed me in my chest and said, F you. I caught myself at the back of the seat. When I turned back and looked at him, I don't know his intoxicated state or what, but it looked aggressive like he was going to hit me.
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
And so when I stood back up, I did punch him, yes, ma'am. And I punched him several times. A young lady that was with him was trying to attack Debbie. I was in between them. There was no other altercations. He went and got security while I stood there between the lady that was with him and Debbie. Security came. They did escort us out. We were issued a citation for disorderly conduct. They were allowed to go back inside to the concert. I guess we missed the last 3 songs that Cher sang. We went to our car and went home. As far as I was concerned,
The evening was a bust.
yes, ma'am.
Judge Judy will continue in a moment. And later today,
When we were dating, it was long-term, and I wanted her to move down with me, and she also wanted to live down there with me as well. And when she moved down, everything was fine until people found out on campus.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy.
student Charles Hale says Terry Knight assaulted him at a Cher concert. Terry says Charles was blocking his view.
I'd like to see the police reports, please.
Would you like pictures too, or?
Yeah, sure. I want to see them.
Thank you. And of course, it didn't get the pump knots on my head because they were not able to be pictured, but as you know, he did hit me 3 or 4 times.
I'm reading the police report here. The victim, that's you,
Yes, ma'am.
was somewhat intoxicated.
Which I told you I'd had a few, yes.
Shouldn't have gone drunk to a concert.
We weren't drunk, ma'am.
Sure you were.
No, we weren't.
Listen, a police officer is used to filing things that are very specific, says you're intoxicated. Intoxicated means drunk. Just a nice way. It's longer. But intoxicated is drunk.
I beg to differ. I'm sorry.
You can differ all you like, sir. Give me the definition of intoxicated.
She probably smelled alcohol in the breath, and I was
No.
visibly upset. And
No.
But I wasn't stumbling or mumbling or...
How do you know?
I was pretty well on my wits after being
Really?
beat.
Okay, it's not what the officer said. The officer says intoxicated.
I don't feel that deserved a...
Absolutely not. You are absolutely right. Just because you're intoxicated and acting stupid does not give him license to put his hands on you. You're absolutely right.
He put his hands on me first.
I don't believe that.
That's
Okay.
No,
fair.
Mr. Knight, I don't believe that. I believe that you were real frustrated with his behavior, and I believe he opened up a big fresh mouth to you. I do believe all of those things, but I do not believe that you had any cause to put your hands on him. Now, you were not injured. You had your neck scratched, and he had no right to do that. I want you to tell me what you believe is fair compensation for that.
It's even...
I want just to give me a figure. I want you to tell me what you believe is fair compensation for that.
I believe $1,500 for... Because with the scratch on the neck and the bruise on the neck, which are evident there were pump knots on my head. I missed the whole rest of that week of school because of headaches from just... And the whole last of the concert, the whole last of Cher, who we had gone to see, was spent down in the bottom half of the arena giving
Well, you missed the
statements.
first half of the concert. You missed the first part of the concert. You missed the second part of the concert, sir. First part you did on your own volition. Second part you did because you were acting like a fool. I think $1,500 is excessive. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $500. That's all. Thank you.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
I didn't see anybody with pom-poms and all this stand up.
He evidently needs his glasses fixed because everybody around us was standing up dancing. It was a concert.
But, you know, I hadn't been drinking.
And it wasn't Metallica. It did not merit his beating.
School teacher Kendra Pickering is suing her ex-boyfriend, fireman Charles Cannon, for the cost to attend a football game with the guys. Kendra says instead of paying her back, he went on another excursion with the guys.
Order. All rise. That's just case number 321 on the calendar in the matter of Pickering versus Cannon.
Thank you, Bird.
You're welcome, Judge. Parties have been sworn in, Your Honor. You may be seated.
Bird, would you do me a favor, please? You know that pesky fly that we had around here a couple of months ago?
Yep.
Well, he's been resurrected. So could you get me one of those little things that you got me before this?
No problem.
Thank you very much. And Miss Pickering and Mr. Cannon look like two well-behaved people, so I can manage without you for a minute.
Be right back.
Thank you. Miss Pickering, according to your complaint, you and the defendant were in a relationship and you made a loan to him. It was a loan so that he could take a trip, some sort of a bus trip, a sports trip with some other men. And you want the money back because the relationship is over.
Yes.
Mr. Cannon says that there was never a loan, that this was sort of a quid pro quo because he had arranged for refinancing on your house at some point. I know you're smiling. We'll get to it.
Okay.
He had arranged for refinancing on your house, saved you a whole bunch of money, and you agreed that he would be paid by you financing this trip. That's your defense.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss.
I know it was on the lip. I don't get it. Anyway, thank you. So, Ms. Pickering, Were you and the defendant living together?
No, Your Honor, we were not. We were dating.
Objection.
Listen to me. Listen. Don't interrupt her. Do you understand?
Yes,
You will have an opportunity to speak when she's finished.
Yes, ma'am.
Go.
When I divorced my husband and moved back to South Carolina, Mr. Cannon was one of the people contracted to move my furniture back to South Carolina from Georgia. I was reintroduced to him at that time. We went to middle school together. Immediately after I returned, we began dating. But
never lived together?
Never lived together, but he spent most of the time with me. It was very, we talked about getting married. He talked about how it was destiny for us to be together.
Stop.
Don't frustrate me.
Yes, ma'am. I was just saying, let's get to
No.
Yes.
When I look at your direction, ask you a question, you're going to speak.
Yes, ma'am.
Other than that, you're not going to speak.
Okay.
So when I said you didn't live together, the answer was we didn't live together, we dated.
We dated.
Right. Tell me about this loan that you made to him, when that was, because there were two parts of the loan.
Exactly. Mr. Cannon and I had been supportive of each other, making small loans back and forth financially to help each other out when needed during the time that we dated. This particular occasion, in October, he sponsored a trip for
October
the guys.
Of what year?
October of 2001. He sponsored a trip to a Falcons football game in Atlanta. At some point, he did not have the money to pay for the tickets. So he asked me if he could borrow the money.
How much money did you need?
It was $960 for the tickets. Although we had exchanged money before loaning process, I felt very uncomfortable with this amount.
Well, had the previous loans been smaller loans?
They had been much smaller, $50, $100, $150. So, and it had been repaid. Because I felt uncomfortable, I wrote the check to the travel agency.
Can I see that, please?
I would not write it to him, nor would I give him cash. I was under the assumption that when the guys boarded the bus, that they would pay the remaining balance. When they returned from the trip, I heard of how wonderful it was.
When was the trip?
The trip was in November.
Okay.
I heard of how wonderful it was and received a magnet, but not my money.
Okay.
At that point, I did not question him about it. I was hoping that he would do the right thing because, once again, this is someone I wanted to marry. Later on, in the 11th, November, he also borrowed money again and again in December.
Well, what did he borrow money in November for?
I was under the impression that it was Christmas gifts. During this time, I've been throwing hints that I wanted an engagement ring. I'm hoping that this was for that purpose.
So you were giving him money hoping that he would buy you a ring?
I was giving him money hoping that it would help him purchase the Christmas gifts for his children and then have extra to do what I wanted him to do.
How much did you give him in November?
In November, I gave him a check of $135, and I clearly marked on there that it was a loan. And in December, I also gave a check of $50. And I marked that that was a loan as well.
Miss Pickering, he hadn't paid you back the October money yet. Why are you giving him more money?
At that time, we were talking about moving in together. I was, lack of a better judgment, I was a fool for love.
Right. Okay. I'm not interested in these two little loans. I'm not interested in that because that comes under the category of stupidity. If you lend somebody almost $1,000 and they don't pay you back when they get off the bus, and you lend them another $50 and another $135, then you're not too smart.
But once again, Your Honor, he was promising me the whole time, making promises. This is someone.
Promises of what?
Of commitment, of relationships.
Just a second,
repaying.
I don't care about commitment relationship. That's not my job. You want to go commitment relationship, go on Jerry Springer. If you want to come here, this is a court. Court, exactly. You talk about if he's making statements, he was making statements about returning the money. Exactly. That's all I'm interested in.
And he had returned money in the past, and I indicated that it was a loan on the check.
I understand that, madam. You're not following me. If you give somebody almost $1,000, which you said to me a moment ago was more money than you had ever given them, and you thoroughly expected him to have the money as soon as he put his keister back on land where you were, and all he gave you was a magnet.
Yes, sir.
Right? Then when he comes to you and says, I need another $135, I need another $50, you say, you're not getting another penny, my dear, until I get back my $960. And if you do, deal with it. And I don't want to hear about commitment. Commitment, we go someplace else. Commitment, we don't deal with here. All right. Let me hear from you.
I'm glad you settled that for me, Your Honor.
Don't thank me yet. I'm not finished with you. Where's her $960?
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
So I, being the wonderful person that I am, tried to save her a lot of money by letting her go through one of my mortgage brokers.
What did that cost you?
It didn't cost me anything. What it did,
Right.
it saved her thousands.
Right.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Kendra Pickering says ex-boyfriend Charles Cannon owes for the cost to attend a football game with his friends. Charles says he saved her thousands by helping to refinance her mobile home.
Go ahead.
Actually, it should be a balance of $40 owed to me.
Just tell me where, honey.
Because at the time, right before, I think it was right around September, I was working part-time selling mobile homes. By doing that, I was involved and had relationships with several different mortgage companies. At the time, Ms. Pickering was talking about getting a house refinanced. She had went around to several different other mortgage companies.
I did not.
I don't want to hear you.
Thank you.
Talking. Keep talking. I can multitask.
Actually, she was thinking about refinancing the house through the mortgage company she was in at the time that she was thinking about refinance. So I, being the wonderful person that I am, tried to save her a lot of money by letting her go through one of my mortgage brokers.
And what did that cost you?
Actually, it didn't cost me anything. What it did,
Right.
it saved her thousands.
Right. Didn't cost you anything.
So, I agreed. I said, well, look, she's getting $13,000 back. I said, well, I agree to set you up with the guy. Just give me a $1,000 referral fee.
What kind of character are you?
We wasn't in a relationship. This is a
What
kind
of a character
her
are you?
imagination of this marriage.
Listen to me. What kind of character are you?
Wonderful. You know,
No. No. Not wonderful. Not
I had
wonderful.
to pay. What, could you quit
Not
asking?
wonderful.
Yes, ma'am.
And don't tell me no relationship, because although I'm not entertaining these things, clearly she gave you this money.
Well, it wasn't to the extent that she's saying, you know.
Don't give me extent. Whether you have a little extent, sir, that's your problem, or a bigger extent, that's maybe everybody's problem. He has a smaller extent, he won't acknowledge that.
Well,
listen to me very carefully. If you have even a smaller extent relationship, which will be your long-term problem.
Yes, ma'am.
Or not.
Yes, ma'am.
If you are in a relationship with somebody and intimate with somebody, and if they need something and it doesn't cost you anything, because you know somebody who could help her out getting refinancing for her house and you hook her up with that person, then you don't be a pig and say, well, I'm saving you all this money, so why don't you give me a little bit of money because I saved you all that money. You say, I'm glad I could do something nice for you.
I mean, but
I was
only doing the American way.
But do it the American way with somebody else that you're not sleeping with, sir.
Well, Your Honor,
Well, don't give me, well, Your Honor. You owe her $960. She gave it to you. Why don't you give the money back to her and say finished?
My point is, the big point is, this was not an issue until she came to my house one evening. I said, look, I don't want to be bothered. Okay, this was over a year after. She didn't file this till after a year after.
I don't want to hear. Yeah, so?
It wasn't a big issue till she came to my house.
Yeah.
Way out of control. I said, look, I don't want to be bothered. I'm ready to move on. And the police department had to come by. They told her, look, ma'am, you need to leave. And then she came up with the issues about the money. And they said, well, if that's the problem, you need to go file it in court.
So if this lady is saying to you, this is standing in the way of my moving forward, clearly you benefited from this money. Clearly I gave it to you, $960.
Yes, ma'am.
I feel as if I've been used. You don't want a relationship anymore, and you don't want to return the money. Relationship, I can't force you, but the money, I want you to pay me. Then you give her the money. It didn't cost you any money, right? So you act like a man, whether you have a big commitment or a little commitment. You give her back the money. $960, judgment for the plaintiff, that's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
He knows that he's made promises of love, commitment, gave me a ring at Christmas, and now he denies all of this?
It was spoken about.
I'm just in awe at how he could lie.